Hey, Brian, I got bad news for you.
Oh, what's that?
I can't do the episode today. I gotta get to the outlets. I got a outlet sesh that I'm going on here. So what I do is I get a smoothie, then I hit the lower half. I can't remember it off the top of my head, but I definitely have a game plan. I do the lower half, shoes, socks, shorts, and then I end it with something sweet like a cinnamon pretzel.
Interesting. Do you find your own jokes along the way, or are you just going to steal them from the TV show?
You know what? I thought I was going to come up with my own jokes in the middle of it. I didn't plan any of this. We need to have a game plan for our episode. What do you think?
Could be, because, listeners, what happened was me and Matt were just talking, and then Matt just hits record and says, all right, we're starting now.
No warning. This is how we do it. Hey everyone, welcome back to TV Guys, the show that tells you, you can do anything you want. You can be president, you can be statues of liberties, whatever. I'm Matt.
I'm Brian, and you can also laugh at the sun.
Such a good line. If you have not watched this episode, obviously, whenever we do these deep dive, I don't know how deep we're going to go. We're not very good divers. But whenever we do these episodes, we encourage you to watch the episode first, too. And Background Check is such a great episode. So this is from Season 4 of New Girl, Episode 6. We watch through it so that you wouldn't have to, although you should.
Currently available on Hulu, but streaming services change all the time, so you never know. It was on Netflix, now it's not.
I really love how I toss it over to you, and then your go-to is, now on Hulu, here's an advertisement.
Well, because I'm listening through an old podcast about Friends from like 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And they're all talking about, on Netflix, and this. And it's like, well, it's not even on Netflix anymore.
It's not, no. It went on Peacock, and then I don't think it's on Peacock anymore. I think it's on HBO Max.
It is. HBO Max is how I'm watching it.
We're still calling it HBO Max. You can call yourself Max all you want, but we're calling you HBO Max.
This is literally a dumb joke when it's like, streaming services, all you have to do is cut out the first part of your name and you're cool again. And then Peacock was like, no thanks.
See, I thought of it of like the HBO Max coming in like Andy after Anger Management. Hey, HBO Max. Oh, it's just Max. What? Yeah, I'm Max now. No, I'm not calling you that.
But Max is better than Twitter being X.
That is absolutely true. Max has 2 more letters than that, so
yeah, that's true.
We gotcha. That's science. Take it to the bank. Well, anyway, we are not only talking about New Girl, we're also in person, as you can hear. We don't usually we edit those coughs out. Today, we can't.
Nope.
We're stuck with them. All right. Well, we're also going to do a different format for it today because with these episodes, we'll tend to do let's start at the beginning. This is what happens in the intro, and then and we kind of walk it. I like this idea that Brian came up with. He's like, let's just look at the characters. I'm like, yeah, actually, that's a really good idea. Let's start character by character and just hit their high notes and what they're doing in this episode.
Well, I think you got to start with Winston because Winston, even though he has the least to do in the episode, it's about him, and his whole thing sets up the premise of the episode.
It's also really good character development for him because we've had a little. Up until this point, there wasn't a ton of character development for him. They, in the second season, you know what? Let's lean into his weirdness. And then they did that. And then they let him be weird for a season and a half. I mean, they let him be weird for the rest of the show. Yeah. But they let him just be weird for a season and a half. And then let's also make him need some purpose. And so then he starts with his police career. And this was the episode that really turned things around because up until this point, we were seeing him the way that everyone else in the loft was seeing him. Mm-hmm. We were seeing him as this guy's going to be a detriment to the police society. Police society. I don't know if that's what they're called. The police force. Yeah. That's it. That, I wouldn't trust him as a cop or anything like that. But to hear as the episode goes on that actually he's doing tremendous in what he's doing. And so this is a great way for the show to say, let's turn his character on his head instead and give him a little more depth.
Yeah. And I like when you start getting him into a cop, you get him into actual career path, and that leads to him finding Allie and having that purpose. Because Before that, he went through jobs, and the only really consistent thing we had besides the friends in the loft was he had a cat, Ferguson.
Yes. Winston's still funny, even though he doesn't have... This is kind of like I think the Honey Roast episode, where it was again about Winston, but everything that was happening didn't have to do with him, and he's just like, I'm so excited for this. So, like, there's this fun energy we get every now and then of Winston, like, I have no agency what's going on, even though it's all about me. I'm ready for it. And so he just comes in with these random lines of like, oh, I found this shirt on the lawn. That's the story.
That's the whole story. We can talk about it later because we should stick with this episode for now. But my favorite line in the whole series is a Winston line, and it's just the dumbest joke ever. I'll tell you about it later.
Is it the anecdote of him falling asleep in the bathtub?
No, but that's good too.
I love that that's a story. Angie and I will joke about that too because, I've actually fallen asleep in the bathtub. I don't know. I don't think it's a common thing, but it has happened to me.
Well, Matthew Perry did.
Oh, jeez. Oh, my gosh. Wow. All right, so I have, but I love that he's like, it's such a story instead of like, yeah, this is a thing that happened. Anyway, thank you for derailing that right in the middle of it.
I couldn't not.
Couldn't you though? So yeah, Winston, for it being about him, you're right. He doesn't have a lot of agency. So I think the one who brings,
we still have to say what the whole deal is with him is that he has to have a background check.
Oh yeah, he's doing something. Go ahead, Brian.
He has to have a background check. And they have to come to the loft and interview the people he lives with, his friends, to see what kind of person he is, to see if there's anything that would make him a bad cop.
And so they bring in Sergeant Dorado, who they call the Fish. And I think they call her that because she's tough but fair, like most fish that I know. That might be the best Winston line of the episode. I like the joke about the shirt, but that's a really funny line.
Yeah. I'm sure there's probably... some more, but yeah, that one.
I think that's a real fit. No, I've quoted Schmidt. Schmidt's response after this, telling him what a Dorado is, and like going through and say it's this blah 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 blah, and then ending it with just instead of it being like enraged Schmidt, just ending it with you oaf. Just the cadence he says after he explains all of it to him. I have tried to emulate that cadence sometimes with people, and they never really get the reference because it's just two lines or two words. But it's fun to It's fun to. We can't edit this, guys.
We can, but I choose not to.
I've been awake for 12 hours. I'm barely hanging on. Anyway, what was I saying? Winston, he's great.
Yeah, Winston is great.
So you got any more ill-pleased Matthew Perry jokes before you move on with another?
Not yet. You can't plan them.
You can't. That's true. So the person who brings the conflict in the episode, though, isn't even Sergeant Dorado. It's Jess.
Yes.
Because Jess, in typical Jess fashion, makes things a million times worse by not thinking things through all the way. So, of course, she already knew that she had this. But hearing that a police captain is coming to their apartment to investigate it, she doesn't want to cost Winston his shot at being a cop. And so she comes clean with the rest of the loft about this ottoman that she bought.
Yep.
And inside, when she bought it at a garage sale, it had this bag of what could only be methamphetamine.
Well, you're kind of spoiling the reveal at the end.
No!
Well, it didn't just happen like that. First, she says, I have a bag of meth in my closet. And like, what? And then she gets in there, and it's Coach and Winston. No, Coach and Nick and Schmidt. And she starts telling a story. It has nothing to do with the meth. Oh, yeah, I was at this fair the other day. I was buying... Get to the meth! And like she keeps like derailing it, going on tangents.
And all three of them together are just yelling, no one cares about the fair!
Again, in real life, this wouldn't have to be a whole thing. Even if she thought it was meth and you didn't know how to get rid of it, all she had to do is say, hey, Cece, can you come over here and take this meth back to your house, and then we'll deal with it after the police sergeant leaves.
And that's a real friend.
Yeah, and you know Cece would have done that.
Yes.
So
well, she comes in ready to do it.
Yeah, that's all they would have had to do. I mean, of course, we don't want that because we want interesting television. But it's interesting. It's one of those times when you look at the show, like in universe, this has a very simple solution.
Yeah, and what's great about, and we're going to get to the other characters too, because what's great about what Jess does and how they work this episode is that they allow her panic to influence Nick, and then those two with their panic really derails the more logical. I mean, Schmidt, yeah, he's emotional, but he should be more level-headed in this, and Coach as well. They work high pressure job. Well, Schmidt works a high pressure job. Coach just has been in sports, which can be high pressure. So they're not.
Coach likes to pretend his job is high pressure. But
True.
He's not.
So it's like there's no doubt in my head that these two guys on their own could handle a high pressure situation.
Yes.
But Nick and Jess cannot.
No.
And because of how badly they handle it, Schmidt and Coach have no choice but to also handle it poorly and get caught off guard.
They all feed off each other in the worst way.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, so until this past year, I spent 7 years every Wednesday with a boys group at the church. And it's a lot of times it's the same thing. There's like one or two kids that can be super well behaved, super awesome. The more kids you get in, the more 4th, 5th grade boys you get in, the more chaos and just unbelievable BO as well.
Yep, unless there's Axe spray. Then we all know Axe spray covers up everything. Teenage boys, they take showers in Axe.
Which, I mean, I don't know if I went through an Axe phase as well.
I used it. Like, okay, I can 100% say that as an Axe wearer at a certain point, I know I didn't overuse Axe because I had a lovely example of a friend of mine who did overuse Axe. And he was the cautionary tale because I heard how girls talked about him behind his back. And I resolved in my heart, no, just one very small spray is all I get. And it works.
Yeah. We also had a youth leader who, would just bring deodorant to the boys and be like, hey, start wearing this.
Which, I mean, honestly, like, that might, if you're out there, that might sound like it's rude. That is the, like, nicest thing that someone can do for a middle schooler. Be like, you don't get this yet. You do stink. And I want to save you all the embarrassment.
Yes. Anyway, this is back to the girl.
So speaking of things falling apart and like how some of these characters would be cool-headed, we're going to get to Coach and what he does in a minute. But I think that's one of the reasons that they pulled Coach from the rest of the group for a little bit of this episode is because he should have brought a level of maturity back into the group that was needed. And so to make it believable, they did, I think, have to pull him away. And then they also gave him a very funny payoff by doing that. But staying with Jess, she has some really funny lines in this.
Yeah.
She's not the funniest part of the episode, but she definitely is the most conflict.
Yeah.
But I do like her just not being able to hear it from anyone else, of her like just being in her panic anxiety mode and like, Jess, that's not how drugs work. Don't tell me how drugs work. I'm on meth.
Yeah, because she thinks she's on meth because she holds the bag of meth under her shirt to hide it, and she says, I think I'm absorbing it through my boob skin, which of course, it's just a funny, boob is just a funny word.
Is it?
Well, I mean, in the context of like, it's funnier than her saying, "Oh, it's through my arm skin."
And she's got the bag underneath her shirt when Dorado arrives, because of course when she first is dealing with it, this is probably one of the funnier parts, is that when she initially finds it, she throws it to Schmidt in a panic and it busts open because she just has a terrible throw.
Yeah.
And so they're all trying to figure it out while Nick is singing Landslide, because Nick is a terrible liar and he can't see where this is going to go, because if he does, he's going to be looking at it or he's going to say trash. So he can't know or hear what is done with the meth. So he's just in the background singing Landslide while they're all panicking to pick up every small piece of this meth.
Yeah. Again, vacuum?
No. just the way you said that makes me think of Lillian Marshall's wedding. Hat. We thought of Native American headdress before we thought of hat.
Yeah. Maybe it's just because I like keeping my place clean and I like to vacuum.
That's true. Yeah, you do suck. So, What was I going to say?
I'm not sure. I mean, so
cut out the pause.
Okay. You're on Jess.
We're on Jess. Oh, and so with Jess, like the way that what we find out in this episode as things go on, because this is her arc, dealing with meth. But comes to find out, it's not actually meth. Before we get to finding out what it actually is, she gets caught by Winston. So their two stories now intersect here, and Winston sees she's had this bag of meth. Winston doesn't know the difference. He sees it as what she's telling him, that it's meth. And so he asks her, why didn't you come to me? And there's that whole conversation they have in the bathroom where, as I talked about with Winston, we get to see Winston in the light that the rest of the loft he sees him as. And he realizes how they see him, that they don't see him as a real police officer. They just see him as the crazy Winston, their roommate. There's not the trust there. So Winston starts to man up here, and he decides that he's going to take the responsibility. He's just going to do the mature thing. And it's funny because when Winston has to be the voice of reason, you know you messed up.
Exactly. Real quick, though, I just realized as you were saying, so interesting parallel. A few weeks ago, we talked about remedial chaos theory with Community. And in both of those, there is an episode where the black friend is in a bathroom confiding with his friend about wanting to be taken seriously.
Look at that. It's just a common theme.
Yeah.
And those probably episodes were probably within a few years of each other.
Yeah, the same era. Those shows were on at the same time. I don't know about when the seasons lined up.
Yeah, I would look it up, but I'm already got my electronics in use right now, so we're just gonna pretend the same day.
Yeah,
even
the same day.
It's crazy how that worked.
Don't look it up.
Don't do that. That just ruins the fun, the magic of this coincidence.
Yeah.
So they have the conversation. Winston goes out to face the music with Sergeant Dorado. And then Jess comes out, and she is going to take the fall. And she's like, take me to jail. I've got meth. And so she throws herself in the mercy of Dorado. And then Dorado goes in to investigate the bathroom, investigate the quote-unquote meth problems. Come to find out, it's aquarium rocks.
Yeah. But even then, if it was meth in universe, Jess didn't knowingly take the meth, and Winston knew nothing about it. So I don't think that would have disqualified him from being a cop.
No, I mean, there. Who knows how it would have played out, but it shouldn't have disqualified him, because as us, like from the outside in, being aware of this. Like, we know that the mature thing would have been to talk with the police right away, or to go to Winston, or even just to dispose of it. Like, find somewhere else that people aren't going to get to it and just get rid of the
Or
drugs.
Jess, when she got the ottoman in the backstory, why didn't she go to the police right away instead of keeping it in her closet?
Hey, there you go.
Yeah.
Police about the person who had the meth to begin with. She bought that from Aaron Paul. It's true.
Oh, yeah.
So...
It's like, did you ever see one of those Emmy things? They used to do like the Emmy intros where they have all the shows interact with each other.
Yeah.
The one where they have Aaron Paul as Jesse walking into the office, and like, what's with the cameras? And then Creed's like, he's selling meth to Creed, and Creed just goes, "My crystal meth got here, guys." You remember that one?
Vaguely. I remember that, but I remember more the Conan O'Brien one where he's going through all the different genres and he stumbles into the office.
Yeah. Oh, that's right, because he was on Lost, and he goes down the hatch, which ends up being in the office.
Yeah.
In this one, it was also right. It perfectly lined up. It was the season after Michael left, and it's also the time when Ashton Kutcher was taking over for Charlie Sheen in 2.5 Men, and they're like saying, "I don't think he's supposed to be here." And Ashton Kutcher is sitting in Michael's chair in the office. He's like, "I'm taking over here as the new lead." Like, I think you're in the wrong spot. Andy and Pam were saying that. And Ashton Kutcher looks, "Oh, I was wondering where the half man was."
And it's funny, I don't remember that, so I'm glad that's a funny joke.
Yeah.
Well done. Good job, Emmy writers. You did it. You should give yourself an award.
Emmy writers from
sometime.
Would have been, I think, 2012. If I'm
Yeah,
right.
those guys. You guys are awesome.
Yeah.
All right, so that's Jess. That's Winston.
Save Nick because Nick's the best.
Nick is the best. He steals this episode. This episode, like, rises and falls on Nick. Sure, they all have good parts, but good gravy.
So you want to do Coach or Schmidt next?
Let's also save Coach, because Coach has the second best.
Yeah. Oh, and let's do what the episode does. Let's talk about Coach's setup, and then we'll talk about Schmidt and Nick, and then we'll talk about when Coach comes back.
Okay, that's fine.
Because Coach in the beginning of the episode, it's one of those episodes where I was talking to Matt beforehand. I don't know if they needed Damon Williams Jr. was doing something else. They needed an excuse to write him out because he's gone for a big chunk of this episode. Because in the beginning, they're all making up lies about Nick or Winston to make him look good. And he's like, yeah, he volunteers with the Boys and Girls Club. He's got a little brother, Du Quan. And Cece is like, oh, Cece doesn't really do anything, but she shows up at some point to help out. And she's just there for the rest of the episode. And Cece even asks, like, Du Quan. That's the name you're going for. Yep, Du Quan. And then she's saying, like, what's her name? What's the sergeant's name?
Sergeant Dorado.
Dorado. It's like, I'm going to make a note to call the Boys and Girls Club. And he's like, no, don't do that because someone's going to go get Du Quan now. I'll go. I'll just go get Du Quan.
Because he comes over every Saturday. Well, where is he? Well, I need to go pick him up. You're going to go get Du Quan. I think so.
And we show him at a park, and he's like talking to kids. It's one of those things where it's not funny in real life, but it's funny in the show. It's like, I need one of you to be a friend to a grown man. No, that doesn't sound right. I need. He says a couple different ways, and they all sound bad.
Every single way just sounds like he's soliciting children. And he says the line, but at least he has the awareness of like, no, that's not it. And he keeps trying to correct himself and save himself. And then eventually gets to the point like, no, nothing I say, there's no way I can phrase this.
It's like in Arrested Development when Tobias says things all the time, and Michael's like, that's what you're going with?
Yeah, but at least Coach hears it. So
And we're allowed to laugh at it because we as the audience know that's not what's going on.
Yeah.
So
forget my face.
So then hold on that. Just like in the episode, Coach is going to be gone for next little bit.
And we can combine two characters. I think Schmidt and Cece, because their story is intertwined, that we can put them together. Because Schmidt starts off the episode there, but in order, like you had said, Jess would just call Cece, help me out. So Cece does come to help out Jess, but Cece comes late. Dorado's already there. She can't just take the meth, or she can't get rid of the meth, so she just has to figure out the way to help out Jess. But what had happened the night before, or maybe it was a couple nights before, is that Jess and Cece had been texting about this date that Cece went on with a guy named Paul. So this is, of course, at a time after Schmidt and Cece had broken up and Schmidt had cheated on her. And so now she's getting back out there. So Schmidt's jealous. Mm-hmm. And so the whole arc for those two is Schmidt reconciling his jealousy over Paul, which is a stupid name.
Yeah. Paul. How do you say it? It's not even a name.
So our guest that we've had on here, Paul, like 6 times or 7 times.
8 times.
8 times. 9, 10. So he doesn't watch New Girl, so I like references to him once.
Didn't he start watching New Girl?
He might have.
Because he said in a chat with us, I have to admit, I'm the Schmidt.
Oh, did he?
Yeah.
At a certain point, he wasn't watching it, so when I made this reference to him, and like, oh, stupid name, Paul, he didn't get it, and just like, why are you making fun of my name? Which is completely understandable to ask.
I don't know if he'll listen to this one or not.
He might not. We'll see.
Yeah.
Paul, you're the only person that texts us when we do episodes, so feel free to let us know if you're listening or not.
Yeah. And it's also one of the things where Cece walks in and Schmidt's like, oh, it's my girlfriend Cece. He walks in and says, like, play along or Jess goes to jail. And he kisses her. It's like, I don't think he needed to say he was her girlfriend.
No. I mean, he didn't need to shut her up because as soon as she comes in, she asks, where's the freaking meh? And then he kisses her to shut her up from saying meth.
Yeah.
But, and then I get the idea of like, oh, I need to cover by this is my girlfriend. Of course, that's why I kissed her. But then to keep playing it up, there wasn't the need for it.
No. And does Schmidt really do much else besides just be kind of awkward around Cece? Is there anything else to their story?
No, they do they do have a good line I quoted to you earlier when we were at dinner where Cece's like, fine, it wasn't Paul, it was Mark Paul Gosselaar. And he's like, well, that man's a god. He's like, all right, you win. And then he's like, if you get married, will Screech be there? And so, what was the line? And so Cece's like, well, I'm just kidding. He's like, hey, go in there for a second. There's a real second there where I had bad feelings towards Mark Paul Gosselaar, and I didn't like any moment of that.
Yeah. Also, along the lines of Matthew Perry, if Mark Paul Gosselaar did get married now, Screech would be the only one not able to attend.
Let's just keep bringing up dead people. Can we do that?
Well, you brought him up. Well, actually, the show brought him up, but he was alive then. I just keep mentioning that they are dead.
Yeah, and Pierce had sex with Eartha Kitt in a bathroom. Yeah. It came up naturally.
I don't think it came up naturally. I think Pierce had to take a pill.
No, what are you talking? Jeez. This episode is going to have we're too tame to put an explicit warning on it. But all you 10-year-olds, stop listening right now.
You mean stop listening 30 seconds ago?
Nope, now. Because we're just going to get worse. And yeah, so Cece and Schmidt, that's the character drama of the season of like playing with their romance. And that's fine. It works. They have enough agency in the episode. They have funny lines, but they aren't like the heroes. To me, again, this falls to Coach and Nick. And so let's jump back to Coach, because once everything is resolved and Dorado tells them that, like, yeah, no, Winston's going to get the job. He's a fantastic recruit. We love him. Or I don't know if she says we love him. I'm just embellishing. Yeah. But she praises him, and then all of a sudden, Coach comes in with Daquan, a 20-something-year-old man who is acting like a child and with broken English, and Mr. Winston's. And I think he looks at Nick first, and they're like, no, I'm pointing to Winston. Like, Mr. Winston's. I love Mr. Winston's. He tells me I can be anything. I can be president. I can be Statue of Liberties. I love the lines that they give him. And then also for him and Coach at the end tag, just sitting there together and talking about things. Like it's like, oh, I usually go to the outlet mall. It's like, I like to get a sweet treat. He's like, no way. Like a pretzel? He's like, no. And they're like, shut up.
Yeah, like same exact thing. He mirrors the speech that Coach just said about going to the outlets in the beginning.
And then he ends the line with the line, do you want to have a tickle? Or something like that.
Do you want to have a tickle party?
Which is exactly how this episode should end, with a line that's stupid as that.
Yeah, you forget when in his speech about Winston, at the end it's like, we do laugh, we do homeworks, and we laugh at the sun.
That's some of his lines. Angie and I will quote together all the time. Just the laughs at the sun, or the I can be statues of liberties. I love when New Girl leans into the absurd and when it works, because there are some absurd you're like, you're just being weird just to be weird. But then there's like Nick's friend Tran. Yeah. The fact that works is baffling to me. Yeah. That just this silent guy, and when we first meet him, holding Nick in a pool like a baby.
And the fact that he doesn't say anything, the crazy comes from Nick interpreting what he thinks he's saying. And we don't know if Nick's right or not.
No. But it seems like he is. Somehow, Nick maybe has a psychic connection.
Well, I'll tell you now that my favorite Winston line I told you isn't in this episode. And it's not even that funny, but it's the fact that it's him completely misreading the situation, and like, this is not the time for jokes. It's in the episode where Cece's mom is coming because they're going to be Cece and Schmidt are getting married, and she's so disapproving. And this is when Winston's doing his pranks, and have this big moment where she's like, if you can't accept the man I love, don't come to my wedding. It's like the big, like, dramatic moment. And then out of nowhere, Nick's like, Mrs. Parikh, check your shoe. Is this a feather? And he goes, Ticklefoot. Like, that on its own is not that funny, but in the context of, like, this is the dramatic scene, he's like, got you. Yeah. And he can't stop laughing. He's like, I put a feather in your shoe. Like, while he's breaking up laughing.
My favorite Winston prank, it was part of the flashback of, like, you either go too big and then flashes, did you register me as a sex offender? And he's just oh man, Winston's a great character.
Winston's my favorite.
Well, my favorite is Nick, and not just because of this episode, but boy, does this episode help.
Yeah.
Because Nick is terrible at lying.
Yes,
That's
yes.
why he tries not to play poker or talk to pregnant women. And just like the amount of sweat he exudes, like at one point before he puts on the kimono, Schmidt has him turn to see, and his back all the way down to nearly his butt is just soaked. And so Schmidt, to try and cover it up, is like, "Here, put this on," and it's his kimono. And Nick's like, "No, I'm not wearing that. It legitimizes you owning it."
Yeah. And Nick has... You talked about last week, you love when there's characters that have secrets and they all come out. This is like things that don't need to be secrets and no one's asking for them, but they still come out. Do you have the list of everything Nick says?
I've got like my favorite, but how much does Josh Johnson like have to...
Jake Johnson.
I'm sorry. How much does Jake Johnson have to be improvising in some of this? Because I'm sure some of this is written down,
yeah.
but this is the sort of thing that the director would be like, "All right, Jake, take a couple cuts and see what you get."
Yeah.
So like he starts off talking, "When I was 9 years old, I fed cereal flakes to a frog and it died."
He goes on listing the type of animals that can live with cereal flakes.
Squirrels can live through it. Chipmunks can live through it. Anything that lives half in and out of water dies. I don't understand why. But the one that kills me right after that, when I was 10, I once walked by my mother sleeping and I snuck in the room and put a lemon in her mouth.
What else was...
When I was 11, I once tried on my girl cousin's wool tights. I didn't hate the way it felt. And then my 16th year, I never got an erection. I thought they were done. I thought my penis was dead. And then the joy in his face, it wasn't.
Yeah. That... Okay, going back to Matthew Perry quick. I started reading his book, and I didn't finish it, but I had a messed up childhood.
Uh-huh.
And I guess he was dating, like a teenager, he was dating this girl, and they were about to, he knew that it was going that way, so he actually got really drunk. And he got so drunk that nothing could happen, and he just thought, I guess that's just not part of me. I guess I can't just do that. Because he was just so drunk that he couldn't, you know.
This is our most PG-13 episode I think we've ever had.
I think so, too. And it's not even that explicit.
No, it's not. But, I'm washing my mouth out with soap anyway, just to be safe.
I actually had that happen once. My mom washed my mouth with soap.
Gosh.
I forget what I said, but I said something I shouldn't have.
Well, you didn't learn from Ralphie on the Christmas Story then.
No.
Well, so Nick has two modes that are just absolutely hilarious. He has Angry Nick, that's so funny, and he has Awkward Nick. And this episode we get a lot of Awkward Nick. Why would Bishop make a good police officer? Mustache. Well, because Winston has a mustache.
All cops have mustaches. Not you.
Not the ladies.
Unless they want a mustache.
Why can't a lady have a mustache? She can, and it would look sexy. Would you like a green grape shoved in your given your hand into your mouth? He's just...
I'm laughing at
so
you reciting.
Bad. Oh my gosh. I love just his Nickisms. This whole episode is so good. Every single time with him. You know, when they all are in the bathroom, like, wait, who's with Sergeant Dorado? And it cuts to them, and Nick's just standing there staring at... She's staring back. I took my love, and I took it down. He starts singing Landslide again.
You know, another good Nick scene is, not from this episode, was when Nick and Schmidt realized they've been using the same towel. It's like, I'll tell you one thing, I've never touched that one. I wash that one every day, or I use that one on me every day.
Oh, I remember another one. She's trying to get him to break. And he goes, all right, distraction! Throws a pillow, and she just does a flick. All right, you're one tough cookie. Oh, man.
Yeah.
This episode, like, if anyone's going to ask me why Nick's my favorite, this is probably Exhibit A.
Yeah. There's a lot of good episodes. Either this or Tran.
Yeah. Menzies is the one he's with Tran's first appearance.
Yeah.
I'll push if I want to push.
Yeah.
But yeah, Nick, here's what's great about Nick too in this episode is he actually finds a way to get around what he was afraid of the entire time.
Yeah.
With his incessant truth telling and secret spilling, and he even highlights it at the end. He's like, "Guys, I didn't break. I didn't tell her."
Yeah,
he was so proud of himself.
Yeah, because Nick is not the guy you want to tell a secret to.
No, because he told all the other secrets, every other secret he had, but he didn't come clean about the meth.
No.
And that's it. So those are the characters parts of this episode. But so Brian, why did we pick this episode? What is special about Background Check?
I think just the combination of everything. It's almost actually, you know what? Except for the one scene of Coach at the playground, it is a bottle episode.
Yeah,
and it gets everyone together. So you get the Nick going on, you get the Winston moment, you get Jess talking about absorbing, thinking she's on meth. You get a little bit of the Schmidt stuff with like talking about Mark Paul Gosselaar. Like every character kind of brings something to the table.
Yeah, and I think this is at its height of comedy because you have all the characters together. Even though Coach does leave for a good portion, right away at the outset we have moments with everyone together and how they respond to this external force. Yeah. And there's also this. It's kind of this playwriting. I can't remember what the device is called, but it's that the thing that when the audience knows something that a character doesn't, and it's a lot of fun to build either the tension or the comedy. It's used to elicit this emotional response where we have the full comprehensive view, even though we don't know it's the Aquarium Box. We have the understanding of why there's a danger here, and yet we just get to have fun with how badly they react. Now, we don't ever put ourselves in the shoes of Dorado because she doesn't know, but we can understand why a normal person would see what's happening here and think the worst things possible about this group of people.
Yeah, and you say Coach was gone, but Coach is kind of a secondary cast member to begin with because he well, it's like he was in the pilot, but then he wasn't on the show, and he came back for like one season. Other than that, he just kind of pops in for guest appearances.
Yeah.
And I like Coach. I think he has a lot of good moments when he's there, but he's the only one who like you could take away and have it not be like a worse show. Like the show would be at a detriment without any of the characters.
I don't think any of his arcs are particularly strong, but he still has a good charm, and he still has funny lines.
Yeah.
And so I do enjoy Coach. I think the show's stronger when he's in there, but he's not needed. You're right.
Yeah, I do love the episode. It wasn't that so they're set in L.A. and that's where they go to New York, and this is after he had left the show. And just a little tag at the end of the show. They show all of them there, and they run to Coach. He's like, "You guys didn't tell me you were here." Which is so funny because all they had to do was I don't even know if he's in the same shot as them. All they had to do was get him for half a day probably. And he's like, just look into a camera and pretend that you're seeing them.
So speaking of getting people, because this is our podcast, we go wherever we want and we just make references to other things. But speaking of getting someone for just a short amount of time, and you probably know this, but since it's the Christmas season, one of my favorite Christmas movies is Home Alone.
Yeah.
And you probably know that John Candy had one day he could give to filming. Mm-hmm. And so he was doing it as a favor to John Hughes because John Hughes and him are good friends. Or they were. And so John Candy shows up on set, and they put him to work for 23 hours straight of filming. But the thing is that he didn't, because it was a favor, he didn't ask for any sort of, he didn't negotiate any pay or whatever. So just by default, he got the minimum wage for a SAG actor. Mm-hmm. And he actually makes less in Home Alone than the pizza delivery guy actor does.
Yeah.
John Candy playing that, getting that paid that little, but
it's interesting when you see little cameos in movies where the person just did it as a favor.
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of like we see that with Marvel movies now, MCU movies. Like they'll have these characters pop up and be like, oh hey, and all of a sudden Falcon's in this. That's cool. Like John Candy popping up in that was probably what that kind of felt like because he still was big in the 90s and 80s and be like, oh, this is a great cameo. Look at this guy.
Yeah, it's like in one of the Thor movies where Loki, just for 2 seconds pretends to be Captain America, and everyone's like, hey, look, he's in it! Oh,
I know him!
Yeah.
Oh, no, he's not. Okay, bye.
Yeah. I keep seeing rumors about they're going to do another Avenger with all the original 6. It's like, I don't believe that, and I don't mean, at this point, you could write any kind of, now that the Infinity Stones are in play, you could make anything happen story-wise.
I believe it because of the panic. I could see producers panicking at the direction Marvel's going and thinking, we need to get goodwill back. And who is our goodwill actors? Robert Downey Jr. and Chris Evans.
But are they going to be able to get all of them back? Is the thing.
I don't know about all of them, but I have heard that about specifically those two, that they were eyeing them, which makes sense if you're looking at it from a financial. Yeah. It doesn't make sense narrative wise in any way.
Yeah. No.
But you're right. They have the Infinity Stones. Comics did this all the time.
Yeah.
Comics are always like, oh, this guy was dead, but look, here he is. It's the clone that we did.
Yeah. Which we talk about is one of my biggest pet peeves, when you clearly write out a character that's dead, then you come back and like they write some BS excuse. Oh, this is why they're not actually dead. It's like, no, you just retconned that.
You're right. Anything about this episode that we didn't cover before we jump into trivia?
Probably, but nothing I can think of off the top of my head.
Yeah, there's a lot of problems there. No. So that was it. Let us know, guys. You watched the episode. You love New Girl. We love New Girl. Let's just all love New Girl together. You know, let's just get along. So let us know if there's anything that you're like, why didn't you even bring this up? We want to hear from you.
Yeah.
So let's jump into trivia.
So last week we talked about Thanksgiving episodes, and I brought up Chris Elliott, who had played Lily's dad on How I Met Your Mother. His daughter in real life also was a recurring character in How I Met Your Mother. And the question was, who did she play? Chris Elliott's daughter, I believe her name was Abby Elliott, played Jeanette, who was Ted's crazy girlfriend towards like the later seasons for about 4 or 5 episodes.
You know how you catch a lot of girls named Jen? You use a Jeanette. I just came up with that. Just right there.
As you started talking, I like, this is going to be a bad joke.
you were already ready to just stand up and walk out.
Well, normally I'm the one that makes terrible jokes in life, so when I get to be on the deadpan side of it, like I'm going to take advantage of that.
That's fair. Yeah. All right, so our trivia for this week is, back in the 90s, they would do all these crossover episodes, and especially NBC. They were just like kings of them.
Yeah.
And so Fox did that with New Girl, and we talked about the episode where they go to New York, and that was actually a crossover episode with another show. Which show did they cross over with in season, 7?
I don't know what season it was.
In that season that they did the crossover episode where they went to New York. I don't think New Girl even had 8 seasons.
No, I don't. I want to say 6.
I was way off. So I don't remember what season it was, but I just remember those episodes, and they did crossover with this show. What was it?
Yep.
There you go. Hey, we didn't say this at the outset. I meant to make an announcement at the outset, but I got too busy making bad jokes, or actually not even making a joke and just quoting something that I did wrong. Yeah. So we're going to start doing something a little different with our formatting here. Maybe not formatting, or scheduling.
Yes.
And so we are not going to have an episode next week, and we're going to start going every other week for episodes. And so in 2 weeks, you're going to have an episode. We're going to talk about the most recent, the Santa Clauses TV show in honor of Christmas and the holiday season. It was wonderful, and my son will be back on because that was the best show he's ever seen, and so now it's got a season 2. So we're going to talk about season 2 of that, and then in 2 weeks after that, we're going to talk about what was some of the best TV from 2023. So you won't want to miss that.
Yeah. The scheduling change is either because we want to build anticipation for our episodes, or because Matt and I have busy lives.
It can't be that one. We all know I do nothing.
No.
So
I don't drive 2 hours to and from work every day.
And only losers do that. I walk 2 feet from my bed to my chair because I work at home.
We have very different commutes.
We are not compatible. All right. Well, until next time, I'm Matt.
I'm Brian.
And we're reminding you to stay tuned and keep watching.